Service design. What are the processes of service design? Design coordination, catalog management, service level management, capacity management, availability management, security management, continuity management, and partner management are the processes of the service design phase of the information technology infrastructure library. What are we thinking about when we're thinking about service design coordination? We're thinking about a single point of contact, right? One person who's responsible for driving the process forward and ensuring that all the documentation and the deliverables are done in time. Catalog management. The catalog needs to be updated on a continual basis. Okay, we don't want to have items on the catalog that are not available as services any longer. Okay, it will create confusion and it will lower the customer satisfaction. Okay, and we don't want to have that. This is where we actually perform the design. At this stage, it's a draft. It doesn't necessarily need to be live, but in the service design, we actually create a draft or how it will look once we go live. So you actually go in the computer and you do the adjustments and you drop in the images and you create a description for the item and you do all of these things to make sure that once we go into the transition and then into the operation, at some point between the transition and the operation, somebody will click OK, let's publish it. Okay, at this point it's not published yet, but it's open for review, right? I can send a link to people so that they can see how the catalog looks, so that they can give me feedback on whether it's within the parameters of their expectations. Okay, we have two types of catalogs. We have a 2-view catalog and a 3-view catalog, and those are just as Gregory had mentioned yesterday, those are just the basic fundamental catalogs that you need to deal with from an ITIL perspective, but a company can have hundreds of catalogs, okay? The 2-view catalog has a view for the external customer. So there's one catalog that has a view for the external customer, and there's one catalog that has a view for the internal customers, for them to obtain technical support. From a service level management, we have service level requirements. Ideally, before I outline a service level agreement, I will request a service level requirement. Okay, if the relationship looks complex, I'd rather have a service level requirement before I outline a service level agreement, so that I'm sure that I'm able to commit to the delivery of services at the expectations of the customer. What is OLA? OLA. Operation level agreement, right? I need to have my internal departments have agreements because I don't want them to be confused about what needs to be delivered when. And also those operational level agreements can help us figure out what the performance is, okay? If one department is not performing, then we can identify in what area that department is not performing by going back to the operational level agreements and figuring out what those agreements were, okay? And then try to find ways to improve the service. What is a UC? Underpinning contract. Those are internal contracts or external? They're external, right? They're external. We have underpinning contracts with external. SLAM. What does it mean to SLAM? The metrics or monitoring, right? Allows us the ability to monitor the performance within our service level agreements. We have SLAM meetings every so often to figure out where we are with our service level agreement performance. We also normally measure the service level agreement metrics with three distinct colors. Which ones are they? Red, amber, and green. And what does the red mean? We did not meet our target. What does the amber mean? We almost missed it, right? Yeah, we were close to missing it. And green means we're doing okay. There are 3 types of service level agreements. One is service based, the other one is customer based, and the other one is multi-level. From a capacity standpoint, we're thinking of the 4 P's, right? Human resources, the people resources. Do we have the capacity? If not, then we need to go look at the job descriptions that were created at the governance, because who creates the job descriptions? The governance, right? So let's look at the job descriptions and let's send out a work order to a recruiting company, or let's put a post on the newspaper or websites and so on and so forth to try to get people to apply, so we can look at the resumes and try to figure out, how we're going to supply the human resources aspect of it. It may be that from a sourcing perspective, which has to do with HR at this point, first we're gonna look inside the company to see if we have the talent. Okay, if we have the talent, then maybe we need to shift things around within the company. Maybe somebody in the company is interested in being part of that project, and so, or not that project, but being part of that process, and so we can involve those individuals into the process. We can have insourcing, that's internal. We can have outsourcing, that's external. And we can have multi-sourcing, so that we're growing our own and we are buying from external, okay? Excuse me. That's from a capacity standpoint. And then from the technology perspective, do we have enough technology in place? Computers, hardware components, right? Wireless devices. Do we have all those things in place? Networking devices, and so on and so forth. And maybe something that I'm missing here. What do you think I'm missing here in our capacity? People. Well, no, that's here. That's human resources, right? I'm thinking, I'm kind of overlapping to here, because I know we have partner management here, but we also need, from a capacity standpoint, need to consider partners. Do we have enough partners in place that have the products that we need, so that we can continue to operate, right? So if we don't have, so maybe capacity manager is working with the partner management to ensure that we have capacity from a partner perspective as well, because I'm trying to look at this from the 4 P's perspective, right? And so I'm missing my partners here, but that's okay because they're over here. But out there, I'm thinking more of the actual managing of the relationship. The partnership is already been established. From an availability standpoint, I'm thinking uptime, right? Every time you think availability, think uptime, because they're kind of tied together, and you'll see that in the exam as well, in the ITIL foundations. We're also thinking 99.999%. When I'm thinking about availability, that's the sweet number. That's really where we want to be, right? That's where everybody is striving to be as far as availability. And what is availability? Availability is well, that's one aspect of it, okay? But give me another description for availability. What is availability? Define it. Is the ability of a service,
when requested or required.
That's right, to be available when needed. To be available when needed. If I go to yahoo.com right now, you should open it. I need it. If the availability is high, I should be able to get there pretty much anytime I request it. Okay? That's what I'm thinking about. When needed. And then some of the things that we need to consider as far as availability is mean time between failure, which means that I'm not going, if I have normally with hardware components especially, you have a life expectancy. There's a life expectancy for almost every hardware component, right? Even for optical discs, or better known as DVDs and CDs, Blu-rays and stuff like that, their life expectancy is 10 years. But they don't last 10 years. Right? You put them in the sun, or you put them in weather that's too hot or too cold. If it's too hot, they get kind of weird, right? The little plastic comes off because of the heat, and so the reader cannot read it anymore. If you put it in the cold, then it builds moisture, and then it builds a fungus that eats through the material in the disk. So it has to have the right temperature, otherwise it doesn't work. Bottom line is that same thing with hard drives, right? Hard drives life expectancy, I'm not sure what it is today, but it used to be 10 years life expectancy for a hard drive, and they used to last that long, believe it or not. Them old ones, like the 10 gigabyte ones, 20 gigabyte ones, yeah, there's still a lot of them around, not in working condition, but because they're not actually working, but that doesn't mean you couldn't hook one up and get it to work. It's just 10 gigabytes is nothing nowadays. 20, even 40 is nothing, okay? 50 gigabytes is nothing, and I don't know why they're selling those solid drives with like 50 gigabytes, 80 gigabytes right now. They should just wait until they get to where they need to be. But in any case, that's beyond this topic. Meantime between failure, I'm not gonna wait until a server goes down. I'm going to replace it, right? Bank of America, for example, I know for a fact, within their budget, they have a process where every 4 years they renew their computer equipment, whether it's working or not. Okay, so we're not gonna wait until computers begin to go down and we got big lines in the bank in order to replace the equipment. Yeah, we don't do that. Yes, sir. It is, and sometimes it will use a slightly different acronym, and I think it's in my notes as well. What you just mentioned is in my notes. It's the same thing. It's just it may be referred to as meantime between failure and meantime between, what did you say? Between service interruption, yeah. So it may also be referred to like that, but it's mostly referred to as this. Yeah, I haven't seen a different acronym in actual tests, and I haven't heard any student come to me and say, hey, I saw this acronym over there, that's different than what you showed here. Yeah, so I think if you stick to this, you should be okay, but you should have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah, because they tried to do a trick question on those, and it said, which one is not the correct answer? And they had meantime between failure on it, meantime between service interruption, and then it said meantime before service interruption.
That's right. It's good. Yeah, it's a game of words, and that's why you have to relax, right? And that's one of my goals, is to help you feel comfortable when you're taking a test with a timer on, right? Because you could lose your sense of confidence. I mean, it's happened to me. I'm going to take a test, and I see the first 3 questions are like so hard, and I'm like, or it's a whole. And so you panic, right? You panic, and you're like, wait a second, that's why we have the flagging system. You can flag it. Yeah. And I'm not gonna worry about it. I'm not gonna even be concerned about that one question, because that's why you have a room for failure, right? And the ITIL is really 65% is almost unheard of for a passing grade, to be honest with you, okay? Most exams are 70%, 75%. Some of them are 80%. Like the Cisco exams are 80%. Microsoft exams are 80, some of them are 85%. And they're much more difficult, much more complex, especially the Microsoft exams for server exams, like server operating systems. Yeah, they're really tricky because they give you this lengthy story. It's like a whole paragraph of story of how Amy had left on Friday, and the computer was working fine, but over the weekend, a device was replaced, right, in the network, and then when she came on Monday at 8 o'clock in the morning, she turned on her computer, and her computer was not able to boot into the operating system, and something else, right, like she dropped her coffee, and she was mad at her boyfriend, and I mean, all this big story, just to ask you, what could be the possible solution. Yeah. Paul, I'm sorry.
Two parts. One is you had mentioned about the importance of the four P's being integral in all decision making throughout the whole life cycle, right? But also, is the what and the how also the key to making decisions throughout that whole life cycle as well? That's one part of the question.
Okay. Well, the what and the how, we're thinking about value, right? We already decided that we have value.
Okay.
And that's why we're moving forward into the design.
Okay.
Okay?
But I mean, monitoring that, as we're making that decision-making process throughout the whole cycle.
Right. Remember that that's why this service strategy touches on all the other phases.
Okay.
Because we're trying to make, at some point, there's going to be some checkpoints
Okay.
by the service, by governance, for example.
Second part, I didn't see anything in the reading about depreciation, and so like you had mentioned earlier about
Depreciation of price or value of value.
Equipment depreciation.
Oh, okay.
Like you said after every 4 years, what HP changes out their stuff or something. So depreciation should be, I think, a factor in determining whether or not you're able to maintain the level of service, provisions that you agreed to in the original SLA.
Right.
So should that be a part of the SLA?
Well, that's why we have service level agreement meetings, to look at metrics and see how we're doing, so that we can figure out whether we're still relevant, if the service is still bringing value to the, overall mission, vision, goals, and objectives of the organization, right? And so, I wouldn't worry too much about that from a 4-year perspective.
Yeah.
At this point, right? Other than unless we have a 5-year plan or the service is
Okay.
a service that's core,
Okay.
right? And I know I'm expecting this service to be live
Right.
for the next 5 years. But in technology, 5 years is almost like saying
Yeah.
500,000 years in human years.
Because if you're going to provision a certain level of targets, then you're going to need to know that your equipment, because when the controllers, they're going to depreciate equipment after every 2 to 3 years and say, well, we need new computers.
That's going to fall under asset.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. He's the one.
Yeah, but you know what? Yeah, that's calm down, Paul. Calm down, man.
I'm not. I'm just.
Did you?
I'm just saying. I don't want to seem overzealous.
No, but so bring it on. Come on, let's get to the point.
I made my point.
Oh, okay. So yeah, okay. So to your point, that's why during the strategic process, I had meetings with the availability manager, and the security manager, and the continuity manager, if there is one, right? Sometimes one person holds multiple hats, and so in any case, I don't just go into the strategic phase and get through that process without having conversations, meetings, lunch meetings, dinners with people, breakfast even sometimes, or brunch, without trying to gather that information, so that we've decided that, now we're talking continuity, but we've made those decisions during the strategic phase, okay? That's within the budget already, whether we need to upgrade equipment every so often.
Got it. Okay.
By the time I'm designing, that's already been decided.
Okay.
And so now I'm gonna have to implement it here. And this is why if we decided that we needed to upgrade equipment to stay relevant to the trends in technology, then we have to have allocated dollars to make that happen way before I start designing. Okay.
So wouldn't that be part of like the business impact analysis?
It would be right. So Paul is a little a step ahead of us, but it's within the same realm, right? Because a lot of times these things overlap. You cannot consider one thing in availability without considering something in continuity. Okay, because they're kind of tied together. We need to be proactive. Again, we want to replace equipment or retrain our folks, right? When I'm thinking about proactivity here, I'm thinking all the aspects, right? Excuse me, making sure that I have good relationships with my partners, making sure that I have relevant equipment to conduct the operations, making sure that I have the human resources, okay, retraining our people, so investing some dollars in personal development or professional development, Okay, sending people out to special training. Let's not be reactive, right? I don't want to be reactive. I don't want to wait until something breaks or until somebody gets sick, before I put a plan in place. Okay, and this is why I may be rotating my employees in the company because, if Gregory didn't show up today, well, maybe Paul has the skills and I can kind of shift things around and, to try to make things happen. Okay?
What's the typical size of the company that uses ITIL?
It could be anywhere from a medium-sized business to an enterprise, right? Remember that the title of this course is Enterprise Service Management. Okay, so Stanford University, for example, is implementing ITIL in ServiceNow right now as we speak. And so that we're talking, a pretty substantially large organization, airplane companies, implement this type of infrastructure, okay?
So that's a large group, a large function of folks that participate in this, so it has to be, value has to be there.
Right. Well, we're expecting you to go to work for very important companies, like LinkedIn, Kaiser, ServiceNow, even ServiceNow, Netflix, Pandora. Those are the companies we're having conversations with, okay? And so, a lot of these companies are companies that even if they're not using ITIL as a framework, they have to have some kind of framework, structure that makes it operational. With a large company, even with a medium company, that's what I'm saying, that a lot of startups, they want to run the business the same way once they grow up, and you can't. You need a structure, and so unless you have an infrastructure in place on how things have to happen, then you're gonna have a lot of issues. Not only with equipment, but with partners, but with the people inside, internal departments fighting amongst each other, and just terrible culture. Why? Because go look at Uber. Why? Because they, from a technical standpoint, they just blew up, and now they wanted to run it like they were just a little group of homies, just kind of joking around, and now they're in deep water with behaviors that are not acceptable once you grow up, and now we're not a small single family. Now we're a team, and within a family you can pretty much get away with anything you want. But with a team you can't get away with anything you want. You get fired. You see, that's the difference, right?
No, but the latest on Uber is.
What is it?
They want him back as CEO.
They do?
Yeah, they're like, his vision and is what got us here. I know he's made mistakes, and he's accepted to it. So going forward, he will know not to do all of this. But we need a visionary like him to be there.
Take us to the next level, right?
So they are getting a petition signed to reinstate.
To get him brought back, huh? They would probably have to send him to training, like human resources, send him out to training so that it's in the records that he would send out for training, and so if it happens again, we as a company, we did what we needed to do. So I mean, there's always ways around things, okay? One of my old bosses used to have a thing that he would come and say, Isaias, I need you to make this happen. Make it. I want this to look like this. Right? And I would be like, well, there's going to be this issue, that issue. And he would be like, I don't want to know what you cannot do. I want to know what you can do. Or how you're going to, or what you're going to do to go make it happen. Okay? I don't know how it's going to happen, but you got to go figure out how to make it happen. Okay? And so I couldn't say, well, I can't do that. It's more like, shit, I got to go figure out how to do it. And then come back and make sure that I've covered all my angles. If it's really not doable, then we're gonna know. Mm-hmm. You see that? Rather than let's just look at why we cannot do it. But that was more of an executive decision because there was no room for a real debate. Yes, sir.
Is ITIL still trending upward in terms of deployment amongst Fortune 500 companies?
That's what I'm hearing.
It still is?
It still is. These things are not going to change that much. Even if they change, even if they come up with a new version for ITIL, right? These things are principles that are pretty much embedded into our culture. They're proving methodologies that, you know, throughout the years they work, you know. And so even if you're dealing with a different, you know, approach, it's not going to be all that different. Maybe the language would be slightly different, just like the difference between ITIL and project management, right? If you're working with project managers, they have language that's very similar, like RACI chart, same thing, right? Slamming, same thing, right? But there may be other things, like ECAPs are also used in project management, right? Which is change advisory board. But then the overall group of concepts are different because they have different objectives, right?
Can it replace either the ISO 21000?
Well, remember, companies can be certified in ISO 20,000. People get certified in ITIL. So if I'm an ITIL certified individual, I can apply for an a company that's using ISO 20,000 or ISO 9,000, for example. And I should be able to dive in. Maybe it's because it's higher, right? It's a higher level of management. But at least it will be easier for you to find your way. And that's all. That's pretty much, I think, from my personal perspective, what we're trying to do with giving you ITIL concepts. Is because I don't want to train you in Splunk or ServiceNow and send you to an environment where you're going to be lost. You know, you're not going to know the language. You're not going to know why they're asking you that. You know what the infrastructure is, and you're pretty much learning everything from scratch. It's going to be much more difficult than if you already have the language and you know the principles and you can see the difference between one department and another and sort of identify, you know, the issues or conflicts or, you know, overlapping responsibilities, overlapping objectives. Okay, yes, sir.
Yeah. On the availability of the lead time to restore service, how about like say the thing with suppliers, like say if you don't, you need a certain type of equipment, what kind of relationship does that come in with availability with third-party suppliers?
Well, same thing here. Now we're kind of moving forward here. You guys are jumping ahead from me, but that's okay. With partner management, again, I have to make sure that I have partners in place, right? That I have options. I don't want to rely on just one partner. Okay, what happened when people in China started jumping off of them buildings? What happened?
They built nets.
Well, I don't know about that.
Yeah, that's true.
But you know, Apple kind of their production got backed up, right? And so things were in back order,
Right.
because we're pretty much relying on a single source. Okay, and I'm telling you, you will be amazed. I'm telling you, you will be amazed how many people in very important positions made the stupidest decisions, as if, as they ignored certain concepts of the aspects of availability and continuity, and then when something happens, it's like, somebody gets fired, right? That's usually what happens. We just fire this person because this person made the decision. Even if that person didn't make the decision, because somebody else made the decision in the strategic phase, right? And so that's why I'm telling you, when I'm operating within an environment, I'm always thinking CYA, right? I'm gonna cover my assets. I take notes of everything. I take notes of my meetings. I try to have maybe a third person in the meetings, right? Somebody who, one of my colleagues who I can bounce ideas off of, but also somebody who my alibi, if you will, right? Yeah, that's why I'm telling you. What I want to do is I want to be able to think ahead, right? Because, and I guess it wasn't all that bad of an experience in one of my previous jobs, because I was always having to look forward in case somebody was trying to set me up for failure. It's like you can't. because sometimes people are trying to make decisions based on dollars and dollars alone. Okay. And so.
Is there a big pool of idle experts out there right now that companies can draw from to actually?
Did
come
you
in?
join that forum that I asked you to join? If you join that forum, you will see what's going on. If you go online and you on LinkedIn, once you get your ITIL certification, okay, you'll be able to put in there that you are ITIL certified. And if you go to look for jobs that require ITIL certification, there's a lot of jobs right now that ITIL is one of the either requirements or preferred. Okay, preferred if you have an ITIL certification. Okay.
I can see how this leaves room to grow because with all the components being separated such that they are, you just keep adding things in and bring in new suppliers, new partners, and constantly growing.
And it might be that you're gonna forget a lot of these concepts, when you are in the field because you're probably working just on operations. So you're not really doing any strategy or designing, you're doing your job is operations, which is what most of you will probably be doing, in some cases. But it definitely helps to be in the know, to know where you are within the overall scheme of things. Okay? So, in any case, I want to be proactive and not reactive. What's VBF? Vital business function. So you see how that works. If you need to know that the vital business functions fall within the availability aspect of the service design phase of the ITIL. Okay, of ITIL. Because you might be asked, they might ask you, okay, vital business functions. If we are gathering information about vital business functions, where within the, under which phase does it fall into? Okay, and you need to know under which phase and under which process. Arms, I did get it right this time, huh? What are the arms of availability? The first arm of availability is availability, so that's an easy one, right? Reliability, resilience, maintainability, security, and serviceability. And when we're thinking about security, what am I thinking about?
CIA.
CIA. What's CIA? Confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay, see, so that's why CIA falls within there, or security. Okay, within continuity, we're thinking about disaster recovery. Okay, we're not gonna wait until an earthquake hits. We're going to have a plan of what we're gonna do when an earthquake hits. I tell you what I'm gonna do if an earthquake hits. I'm running out of that door, and I don't know about you guys. Backup systems, right? We need to have backup systems in place. That kind of goes along because I have to have backup systems in place in case there is a disaster. Okay, so my backup system will be part of my disaster recovery. What is considered a disaster? A hurricane, an earthquake, a flood, tsunami, terrorist attack will be considered a disaster. I need to have a plan for human resources from a continuity perspective. So do I need to fly people to another location, transport them to another location? Do I have a recruiter in another city where our backup systems are in place? Okay, so that I can get talent if necessary without having to fly people over there. All right. I need to have a partner failsafe also. So from a continuity perspective, again, same thing, right? Who is our partners? I need to know that if that partner fails to deliver, I have somebody else who is also producing. So how can I possibly do that? Maybe I have one supplier that's supplying most of what we need, maybe 80% of what we need, and I have another supplier that supplies 20% of what we need. Okay? And that and that supplier with a capacity to expand quickly. So that supplier has to have flexibility, right? Because maybe next month we need more, and I can, instead of giving that to the 80% to the partner that produces 80% of our products that we need, then I can give 30% to those. I can kind of move that around so that I have some flexibility, and I have a way to say, okay, if that partner cannot deliver, then I can increase the productivity here, or if this one cannot deliver, I can expand the productivity here. And I don't want to have them in the same location, because what if something happens to that location, flood, hurricane or tornado, then I can. You have to be thinking about those things when you're thinking about continuity. Okay? Yes, Evelina.
The 80-20 ratio in your example is like random numbers, or is it based on the general practice that people do based on the 80-20 ratio?
I'm sure that there is a number. I'm just throwing a random number at you, but I'm certain that there is some formulas that can be used, just like what I explained yesterday on how you can predict based on mathematical equations on more or less, right, what could happen. And so I don't have the know-how on how to do that, okay? But I've seen people do it.
Yeah, because there's the 80-20 principle, and I was wondering if that's anyhow related, or if it's just coincidence of the numbers.
Yeah, it might be a coincidence in the numbers, and I'm probably close to the actual truth, but I'm not sure. I'm just throwing an example there just to give you a figure of how I would do it. For example, if it was me, right, I would always have something on the side. Okay, don't do that with your personal relationships, by the way. You'll get in trouble. VBF. What's VBF? Vital business functions, right? With continuity, I'm trying to make sure I can at least provide vital business functions, okay? And again, with continuity, it's gonna depend on how important the service is. If the service is really important, we might need to invest, a substantial amount of dollars in a continuity plan, all right? Because we don't wanna be without the ability to provide the service for too long, okay? How many days can I go without providing the service without impacting the overall benefit to the organization or to the company? Well, it depends, right? It depends on the service that we're providing. But it could be, this is where risk management kind of comes into place, right? Because we've considered that when we've considered risk management. We either assume the risk, or we either transfer the risk, or we either mitigate the risk, okay? And when we're applying a solid continuity plan, that means we are mitigating the risk, okay? We're not transferring the risk, right? We're mitigating the risk. The other thing about continuity, let me go back here, because the other thing with continuity plan on regards to having a site, okay? Because it could be, let me just reset here for a second. Let's say that we say, okay, let's create a continuity plan. We can either say, well, we're not gonna have a continuity plan. If this fails, it fails. Well, too bad for the customer. Or we're gonna have a location, just an empty location in another city. We're just gonna lease. We're doing this during the design. I'm gonna go to another city, okay, and I'm going to lease a floor within a building, for example. Just an empty floor, nothing in it. That would be one way of doing it, right? That would be what we call a cold site, okay? Let's say that the service is more important than that, because it's gonna take us days to deploy equipment, right? Order the equipment, deploy equipment, get it to that location, install the computers, have connectivity, right? Get the internet service provider to come and give us connectivity. It's gonna take us a good 15 to 20 days to really get this going. If all I have is an empty site, maybe even a month, okay, to move everything over there. Well, maybe that's too long. Maybe we need more than that in order to reduce the downtime in case of disaster. And so we can deploy what we call a warm site, where basically we put some equipment, okay, on the site, maybe some tables, some computers, just so that we can at least get up and running with vital business functions within a 10-day period, okay? That would be another example. Or we could have a hot site where we basically have all the equipment already installed, connectivity to the internet, but nobody is really there because that site is just for backup purposes or for disaster recovery purposes, okay? Or another way in which we can mitigate, and that's not here in my slide, but another way we can mitigate our disaster recovery is that we have a written agreement with a partner company or a partner organization that says that if in case you have a disaster and you need to operate for a certain amount of time, I will make room within my company for you to bring in your folks. I'll give you half of a floor for you to come in and utilize our equipment and continue to provide this service while you get things, situated because of the disaster that you're suffering. And the same thing, if something happens to your company, we make a commitment that we'll make room in our company for you to bring some of your human resources, right? And utilize our equipment and be up and running. That would be another way, maybe even a more cost-effective way, right? But that would mean that I would have to, then that relationship becomes a tactical relationship, okay? You see how that, then that moves into the level of importance, right? If I have a partner like that, because then we're sort of like sharing resources if necessary. That would be another way of doing it. And then let's see, fault tolerance, right? Fault tolerance has to do with the ability of a component or a service to continue to operate despite failures. Okay, and the example that we had earlier was that of the ATM, that even if the printer fails, you still have access to get cash, right? Now, if you cannot get cash or receipt, that's trouble. Now it's now it's down. It's broken. No good. What's BIA? Impact analysis. How is this going to affect the business, right? That's basically what we're trying to do. What would happen if there's a disaster? How is that going to impact the business? And once we have a business impact analysis, we can begin to figure out how we're going to address the things that are being impacted negatively. From a security standpoint, we're thinking CIA, right? Confidentiality has to do with the ability of a service to keep your information confidential. Okay, so that would mean creation of passwords. From a security standpoint, we're thinking about deployment of firewalls. Okay, we're thinking about shutting down some of the unnecessary network protocols within a network. Okay, maybe we're thinking about intrusion detection systems. These are systems that monitor your network traffic, and they make decisions on whether certain traffic should be allowed into the network, or whether it should be stopped from coming into the network. Similar to what a firewall does, an intrusion prevention system will do that, right? An intrusion detection system will detect intrusions in the network, and it will notify somebody that an intrusion has been detected. And an intrusion prevention system will detect an intrusion in the network, and it will notify somebody that an intrusion has been detected, but it will also stop the connection from taking place. Okay? And so, in any case, that's what I'm thinking when I'm thinking about confidentiality. Also, location, right? We want to make sure that the physical equipment is physically secure. Okay? We don't want to put computer equipment in a closet that has a false ceiling similar to this, because it'd be easy to remove the ceiling and climb over. right? We don't want that. We want to have cameras. We want to have deterrence. Not like the cameras they have in bars that don't even work. They're just fake cameras, right? But real cameras. You want to have real cameras that work. Maybe you want to have somebody, like a receptionist who checks everybody in, checks everybody out. By the way, when you go to your visits, site visits, make sure you bring an ID with you, government issue identification, because what a lot of these companies that we deal with, or even when you go to an interview, it just happened to be, I've been to an interview a while ago where, I forgot my ID, I didn't bring my ID, and luckily they decided to let me in, but that's not the protocol, right? I'm there for an interview, and they're like, well, you didn't bring your ID, so, and this is a security company, so we can't really let you in. I'm like, well, if you want me to work for you, all got to interview me, otherwise I'm walking out, it's your loss. And the lady was like, okay, hold on, let me make a couple of phone calls. I did pretty good with my social engineering, huh? I convinced her I was legit. Yeah, that's another thing. If somebody calls and says, hey, I'm the supervisor of blah, 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 running this department, can you give me, the IP address of what, or a MAC address of this? No. Or can you give me the login information for this and that? It's like, no, I can't give you login information over the phone. That's why they don't do that on AT&T. Not even AT&T does that. Nobody does that these days. If you forget your password, you either go to the through the established process of forgot password procedure, or automated, or if you call, only thing they can do is they can reset your password and send you a link to reset it to a different password. But they don't know your password. That's pretty much the bottom line. So that has to do with confidentiality. So we have to have systems in place. Maybe we need to make sure that we run backgrounds on folks before we hire them. Okay? Maybe as part of that, we do a drug test, right? If you're going to go work for a federal government, maybe you need clearance. And you have to go through the whole process of getting clearance, right? And so that has to do with confidentiality, okay? You can't just be divulging everything that you know, right? There are some things that are kept confidential. Integrity, again, has to do with making sure that the information stays true to its original state, okay? We don't want to change the information in transit, or we don't want anybody to have access to the information and then change the information. We don't want that. Availability, again, has to do, this security here connects with availability, right? We're trying to make sure that it's also available. We have to write a policy, and we have to train people. It is of no use to you or anybody if you write a good, conscientious, kick-ass, badass, top of the line security policy, and nobody knows about it. No, right? I tell you what you can do. You can, and this is the thing, right? This is why you have to train people, because you have to train people to also hold each other accountable, okay? Because if India is doing something that is not allowed based on our security policy, it might be heaven should be saying like, hey, you shouldn't be doing that, They should be, and if heaven is doing something she shouldn't be doing, and India sees what she's doing, she should be like, hey, you should get off of that, that's not right. We need to teach people that when they get up and walk away from their computer, they have to lock their computers, right? We teach them how to do that, right? And that's where social engineers come into the situation and take advantage of that, right? Of your sense of security. Because you feel like it's all perfectly safe, but it's not really. So.
What I would do just to have fun with people is change their backgrounds and put some funny on my thing.
Yeah, what I did once, I switched their screen so that it's upside down. Take it over there.
That's what you do. That's how you teach them. See, hey, what happened to your computer? I don't know. It's upside down, man. Maybe you should go home, get some rest. You'd be like, no, I see it perfectly fine. What do you mean it's upside down?
It was so funny because they didn't realize that they thought their monitor was upside down, so they started experimenting around, which was that could be one of the funniest.
Right. Yeah. You know, when you take security, when you take desktop support courses or IT security courses, networking courses, that we teach you that, you know, if somebody opens up a ticket for you to go to their desk and fix the computer, and you go there and there is, you know, documentation, financial information, for example, on the screen, right? And the individual is not around, right? What are you supposed to do? Right? I'm not gonna touch the computer. You're supposed to not touch the computer because that looks like sensitive information. Okay, maybe I'll turn off the monitor. That's as much as I'm gonna do, and then go find the individual and say, hey, you need to come clear your desk. I can't get into that computer unless you move your stuff. You're not supposed to walk away, you know, and leave financial information on the computer. You know, especially financial information, especially if it has to do with salaries. Okay, because here's what happens, right? People working in a company, they're making a certain amount of money, and then they hire somebody else. They're paying that person $10,000, $15,000 more per year than they're paying you. And then what happens? You get upset when you find out you're doing more work than that person. That person gets paid more, right? Well, it's not my fault. You weren't able to negotiate a better salary. You see, that has to do with negotiating skills. But you know, a lot of companies nowadays are practicing transparency even with salaries. So, whatever. That's why I don't worry about numbers. You know, I don't care. If I make an agreement, this is what I need, this is what I want, and I get paid that, I don't care if somebody else is getting paid more or if they're getting paid less, that's their deal. Okay? I should have known better to negotiate a better deal. And this is why salary negotiation is so important, and I encourage you to, on your own time, research how to deal with salary negotiation so that when you get there, you're not having to deal with that situation. Once I have an agreement on the pay, I'm not worried about the dollars anymore, you know, because that can affect my quality of work. If I'm working and I'm worried about how much I'm getting paid, and especially if I feel like I'm not getting paid enough. Okay, that's why I want to negotiate that right off the bat, and then once I'm doing my work, I'm concentrating on the quality of my work and my pride that I put in my work. Okay, and then the money will follow all on its own. Do what you love, and the money will follow. It really works, you know, when you're able to negotiate accordingly, have a good starting point, and then you move forward. So training is really important. You know, there's a lot of companies right now, for example, out there that this right here, they hire their own internal trainees, you know, and they're making good money, 80, 90, 110,000. So, makes you wonder why I'm here, huh? No, no, I get paid decent in this company, so I got no complaints. Partner management is really important also. We have 4 different types of partners, and this is what you need to know, and you need to know which one is more important in the order of importance based on risk and value, right? So we have operational partners, we have tactical partners, we have strategic partners, and convenience. Which one is the most important? The strategic, which one we can live without? The commodity or convenience, right? We measure this based on value and importance and risk and impact. The higher the value and the higher the risk, the more important. And that's it, right? I have the whiteboard version of it here. Yeah, in this one I actually have the little square. You see that? Yeah, this is a high resolution image, so you can actually click on download the image or copy the image, and you should be able to see this image, like zoom in and see the detail.